Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Sheviis chapter 10, Halacha 1. If you're following along in the art scroll, we are on 79a1. This is the start of chapter 10. Chapter 10 is going to be something not related to agriculture at all. It's going to be clearing debts. And one of the things that comes up with this is that even if a person is outside of Eretz Yisrael, their debts are going to be clean. So normally this has been dealing with within Eretz Yisrael, but this is going to apply both in Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. And also this is just debts from Jews. So there's a direct source from this. It's in Beurim 15:1. It says, "At the end of 7 years, you shall make a relinquishment." And this is the matter of the relinquishment. Every creditor shall relinquish that which he has claim on his fellow. He shall not press his fellow or his brother for payment, for he has proclaimed a relinquishment unto heaven. And the non-Jew you may press for payment, but from that which you have from your brother, you shall relinquish your hand. So this is going to show a positive thing about relinquishing all of the loans on Sheviis. And then you have a negative commandment that's going to forbid you from pressuring to collect the loan afterward. And then there's going to be another issue that comes up, because you say, well, what about lending somebody money in the sixth year and they can just wipe out the debt? So the Torah says in Devarim 15:9 says, and basically is going to forbid withholding credit because you're worried that your debt is going to be wiped out in Sheviis. And it says, take heed lest an evil idea enter your heart, saying, the seventh year, the Shemitah, is approaching, and you will look unkindly upon your impoverished brother, and do not give him a loan, and he will appeal against you to Hashem, and it will be a sin upon you. So, in this case, again, the brother, this is your fellow Jew. So, chapter 10, Halacha 1, the Mishnah starts off, and it says that Sheviis cancels loans, whether it is recorded in a document or not recorded in a document. So this is going to talk about a note that explicitly includes a lien on the debtor's real property. Now, one might have think that, maybe if I have a loan document, that's not going to get canceled out in Sheviis. And the Mishnah comes along and says, no. Even if it's recorded in a document, it's still going to get canceled. Because you might have said, I wrote a document and, I have some sort of coverage. And it's not true. It's trying to show that even loans that are documented are going to be subject to this. This, by the way, gets into a Mishnah that, why is the law like this? Now, we know that Hillel instituted the Prose Bull. Prose Bull is going to be a debt document that comes up that's going to be held by the Bet Din. And this was instituted in a time when people stopped giving loans because they were worried about loan things being wiped out. The nature of the change, people changed. They had less emunah. And so that's going to be an update. Okay, this is talking about the way it's supposed to be. And we saw a condition of this in chapter 1, Halacha 1, where it's asking about the old rules under Hillel and Bet Shammai when they went and instituted the plowing up until Shavuot for a field of trees, and then the court of Rabban Gamliel came and extended it up to Rosh Hashanah. But nonetheless, it goes and records this other earlier case. And why is that there? It's in case that they're going to go back to the earlier condition. There are 4 opinions there in Sheviis chapter 1 halacha 1 for why that is in the Mishnah. One of the 4 cases is so that, if they decide to go back, they can just point to the Mishnah and say, we're just going back to what it was. So that could be a similar thing for this, and a little bit deeper than just, for why it's, recorded this way. It's recorded this way because that's the way it's supposed to be. The Mishnah discusses whether certain obligations are going to be canceled. And the Mishnah says shop credit is not canceled, but if he rendered it a loan, it is canceled. And Rabbi Yehuda says each previous obligation is canceled. So the anonymous opinion here, this is saying that if a storekeeper is making a inventory loan or an inventory purchase, not necessarily as a loan, but he's not converting it to a loan. He's just doing it based on the inventory. And the debt is basically going to be a lien on the merchandise itself. That's going to be one thing. But if you've turned it into a loan to like the business per se, then it's going to be canceled with the Sheviis. Now, Rabbi Yehuda comes with the opinion that the previous obligation is still going to be a loan and it's still going to be canceled. The Gemara is going to go through this in detail, and we're going to get into this in detail. The Mishnah continues and says, wages of a hired person are not canceled, but if he established it as a loan, it is canceled. Now, that's very important. You have to pay your workers on time. And you could say, well, wait a second. I didn't pay all these workers, these fig cutters that I have in the field, and I didn't pay them before harvest, and now the harvest came, it's Sheviis, and, Rosh Hashanah came, and, I'm 3 weeks late on my payment, and now I can wipe out the obligation. It's really like a debt, right? Mishnah comes along and says, no, you have to actually establish it as a loan in order to wipe it out. You still owe your workers wages, and you don't erase it. Rabbi Yossi says in the Mishnah, any obligation for work that ceases in Sheviis is canceled, but that which does not cease in Sheviis is not canceled. So the idea here, says the Pnei Moshe, is that according to Rabbi Yossi, wages owed to a worker for any work that must stop in the Sheviis year because of the prohibition on agricultural work, like plowing, are automatically going to be turned into a loan with the advent of Sheviis, and therefore it's going to be a cancellation. And the Mishnah is going to continue, and regarding someone who slaughters a cow at the end of Sheviis and apportions it on the first day of Rosh Hashanah on credit, the law depends on the following. Mishnah says, if it turned out that the month of Elul was full, so that the first day of Rosh Hashanah was actually the last day of Sheviis, the obligation is canceled. But if not, then the first day of Rosh Hashanah, in fact, is the first day of the year, and it is not canceled, because debt incurred after Sheviis is not going to be subject to cancellation. Now, Elul is going to have 30 days, and that's going to come in with how we're going to celebrate Rosh Hashanah. But if you have it where Elul is not full, so that Rosh Hashanah is actually going to be the first day of the year after Sheviis, then you actually had it where you're off on Rosh Hashanah by a day. So you didn't get to Rosh Hashanah yet. So in the case of getting this meat from the butcher, it's going to be on loan, and because the date hasn't been calculated as Rosh Hashanah yet, it's within the Sheviis year, it's canceled. And so that's another big hiddush, is what happens if you take on debt inside of Sheviis itself. The answer is it gets canceled. That's a big hiddush. So far in the Mishnah, we are covering and have covered what happens if you have debt that was there before the Sheviis, and you're familiar with it. But talking about the butcher, this is a big hiddush because now we have a case that somebody took on debt in the start or even toward the end of Sheviis, but during the duration of Sheviis, and the idea is that that gets canceled out. So new debt during Sheviis is going to be canceled, and you actually have to reach Rosh Hashanah in order for that debt to stay around. Now, the Mishnah is going to continue, and it's going to say that the penalties of a violator, a seducer, a defamer, and any act of the court are not canceled. Now, we know that somebody who goes and seduces a virgin of Israel has to pay a penalty. It's going to be the penalty of the extra amount that comes from the ketubah. By the way, that's going to come out to about a value. It's about 100 zuz. Comes out to about the amount of food and clothing and shelter that it's going to cost for about a year. It's a year, and also it's going to include any of the other kinds of damages to reputation and emotional damage, and also for a violator, not only is it going to, it's going to be like emotional suffering, and so the costs on, rape are actually very, very high in Judaism, and so those penalties don't get wiped out. Somebody could come along and think, oh well, maybe the cases of a violator, a seducer, a defamer, or even the penalty imposed on somebody by a court is really like a loan. And you'd think, oh, well, maybe those are going to go away with Sheviis. They don't. And so you should look at it not like a loan. You should look at it as a penalty. And a penalty is not a loan. The Mishnah continues and says, one who lends on collateral and one who hands his documents over to the court for collection do not have their loans canceled. This is going to be the Prose Bowl instituted by Hillel. So this is going to be a case where somebody is going to lend on collateral, and then what's going to happen is there's going to be a process where it's handed over to the court and the bet din, and it's going to be where they can preserve the debt up until after. And the Gemara is going to start off, and it's going to say that the Gemara addresses the Mishnah's first ruling that Sheviis cancels the loan, whether it is recorded in a document or not recorded in a document. And the Gemara is going to ask a question. It's going to say, it's understandable why Sheviis is going to cancel a loan that is not recorded in a document. But why should the loan be canceled if it's recorded in a document? That's the big hiddush here. And the Gemara continues, says, let it be considered like one who lends on collateral. And basically it's going to be like a lien that's going to be on with a note that's going to be on actual inventory. And, then, wouldn't it be like the same thing where it should not be canceled? The Gemara is going to answer that. And Rabbi Yochanan says, interpret the Mishnah as referring to a document in which there's no provision for a lien on real property. In other words, that this is not talking about where you have an encumbrance on something that exists in reality where you could say, oh, it's like inventory. And he's saying that this is a loan that is recorded, but it's not tied to any kind of collateral. And the Gemara is going to continue, and it's going to say, and it follows the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who maintains that a lien is not automatically provided by every recorded loan document. And since a document does not contain a lien, it is not the equivalent of a collateral-based loan. So one of the nuances here with Rabbi Yochanan is it has to have a lien on some sort of collateral. And that's what's going to make it a little bit different, like the merchandise loan, because that's going to also not just be like a loan debt as an obligation, it's going to be tied to something that's real. So I know a lot of people will go out and take out a business loan. And a lot of times in a business loan from a bank, the business loan from the bank will just be to the person. The person has to pay back the loan. That's not tied to any kind of inventory per se. It's not tied to any kind of real estate per se. Sometimes a bank, if they know you have a house, they will actually tie it to your house. That's going to be a different kind of loan document. So that's not just that you own it. That's going to be where if you owe it and you don't pay it back, they're going to come and they're going to take your house as collateral. So the Gemara is going to talk about an incident that's related to this. And the Gemara says a case came before Rabbi Yochanan with regard to a document in which there was a provision for a lien on real property. And he ruled that the loan is canceled. For he said, indeed, we have interpreted the ruling of the Mishnah that Sheviis cancels the loan to be referring to only a case where there's no lien. Nevertheless, merely because we reduce something through logic from a halacha, shall we act accordingly? In other words, this is a very surprising ruling, and we assume that the Mishnah's ruling refers only to a document where a lien was not recorded, and we cannot rely merely on logic to make such a distinction. So even if a lien is recorded in a document, the loan may not be collected after Sheviis. So that's a very surprising ruling, and Rabbi Yochanan in a similar sugya in the Bavli is asserting that this is based on the fact that the cancellation of debts is a biblical obligation even today, and we may not employ a comparison based on logic unless we are certain that the reasoning is going to be sound. The Vilna Goan says that a case came before Rabbi Yochanan regarding a note that did not have a lien recorded in it. So the Vilna Goan renders this a little bit differently. It says that the note did not have a lien in it, and then it is regarded such that a note, as Rabbi Yochanan ruled, that this loan is going to be canceled. Now, this is going to be a slightly different interpretation by the Vilna Goan. He's saying that there was an editorial mistake in the Yerushalmi, and that really the scribe forgot to write in the word not, and that there was not a lien recorded in it. But the Rosh is going to explain that a little bit differently. What about if there's not going to be a lien in there? What if there's not going to be a lien recorded in there? So the Rosh is going to explain it differently. He's going to say that Rabbi Yochanan stated previously in the Mishnah, which rules that Sheviis cancels a written loan, and that refers to a note without a recorded lien. And that accords with Rabbi Meir, who holds that a lien is not automatically provided. So it should follow that according to the sages, who hold that a lien is automatically provided in every note, Sheviis should not cancel even a note with a recorded lien, because that too would be considered a loan on collateral. So, despite this argument, Rabbi Yochanan would not rely on logic to make such a distinction in an actual case, and he ruled that in the case that actually came before him in real life, the Sheviis nevertheless cancels the loan. So, he was talking about where, in fact, Rabbi Yochanan's ruling is going to be basically not according to Rabbi Meir's opinion, but actually going to be according to the opinion that it's going to be any loan document, even if there is a lien in there. So a little bit hard to understand, because we have two different versions of a Yerushalmi here. We have one by the Vilna Goan, who says that actually there's a scribal error, and there's another interpretation that there is no scribal error, but actually that even though that Rabbi Yochanan said that, in actual practice he did not rule that way, and he basically said that even though there's in reality, even though there's going to be a lien in there, when it actually came down to ruling in a case, he did not rule the way that he said in practice. That's also a very surprising chiddush, but perhaps that's why this is going to be a sugya in here, because it is a surprising chiddush. There's going to be another approach to explain why the Mishnah states that even a loan recorded in a document is going to be canceled by Sheviis. And Rabbi Yerushalmi said the Mishnah may be referring even to a note which includes a provision for a lien on real property. Nevertheless, unlike a collateral-based loan, which is not subject to cancellation by Sheviis, this loan is going to be subject to cancellation. So the Mishnah is referring to a case where the debtor owns no land. And in this case, the loan is going to be canceled even though the lien is recorded in a document. So, in other words, perhaps why this got canceled, according to Rabbi Yerushalmi, is going to be that perhaps, there's a lien in there, but when Rabbi Yochanan was coming and hearing the case, this particular case, part of the nuance is that this particular person, he signed a loan document, and in the loan document, there's a lien on real property, except that he doesn't own any real property. So let's say it says, I'm putting a lien on your house. Fine, there's a lien on the guy's house, but he doesn't own a house. He's a renter, so he doesn't own a house. So it's not a real lien. And so effectively, because the debtor owns no land, even though the note says it, because in fact he doesn't own any land, the loan is going to be canceled, even though a lien is actually recorded in a document. That could be another reason why, Rabbi Yochanan in practice actually ends up canceling this loan. The Gemara is going to conclude, but if he has land, it is not canceled. So the idea is that, if the debtor owns no land, then even if you write in a lien on land, like, I'm going to collect your house, and the guy doesn't actually own a house, well, you're out of luck. It doesn't matter that the document has it recorded in there. He doesn't actually have it. He didn't say anything. And if he does have land, though, it's not going to be canceled. This is going to be the note by the Gemara by Rabbi Yerushalmi. So there's going to be a third approach that's going to come and look at this. We're going to get into the part now by Rabbi Yossi from the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi says even if he owns land, the loan is canceled, even though the lien is recorded in the document. So the ruling in the Mishnah would apply, as it would look like, to all situations, regardless of whether the document has a loan and regardless of whether the debtor owns land. So Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that basically in whatever case, this is going to be canceled. Now the Gemara is going to elaborate on the nuances in Rabbi Yossi's opinion, and the Gemara continues and says that the opinion of Rabbi Yossi accords with Rav. For Rabbi Ba says in the name of Rav, specific plot of land for the creditor, the loan is not canceled. And now they are saying only when he designated a plot of land for the creditor, but he did not designate a plot of land, the loan is going to be canceled. So this is going to be a nuance that Rav is pointing out, makes a lot of sense. So let's say you have a rich guy, he owns a lot of land, and you have a loan document, and it's making a lien on the loan. But what happens is they don't actually say which piece of land this loan goes to. And we know in Jewish law, there's different kinds of property. You have movable property, that would be like the inventory loan that we talked about in the Mishnah. And we have poor property, that's going to be lower quality real property. Then you're going to have middle property and high property, like high quality property. So let's say they don't distinguish, they just say against your property. Well, you have to distinguish because maybe in a point of law, sometimes they're gonna put a priority for the high property and not the medium property. Sometimes they're gonna put it on the medium property and not the high property. So which do you know to collect, right? It might not be appropriate to collect off of the high property, and it might be appropriate to collect off the low property, but the guy might go try to collect off the very, very good property. So it's not clear. And so Rabbi Yossi's point is that because he didn't actually designate a specific plot of land in itself as part of this lien doesn't go far enough. Yeah, property is mentioned. Yeah, there's a lien recorded in it, but it doesn't go far enough to tie it to a specific property. Because of that, it's going to be canceled. That is amazing. So even though you have a case where a borrower is going to own property and there's a general lien on real property, Rav, and by the way, Rabbi Yossi agrees with Rav's view, is basically going to be holding that the loan with a general lien on real property is not deemed to be the same as a collateral-based loan, even if the borrower owns the land. Very big hiddush and very, very brilliant. Having mentioned these legal cases of property and has to be designated specifically for the payment of a debt, the Gemara is now going to get into other such property. So with regards to someone who is obligated for a specific field and set a specific field for the ketubah, says this Gemara, and he went and he sold it. So let's say he took this specific field and he sold it, and this was now the collateral in his the wife's ketubah. I'm sure she's not happy about that. So the Gemara continues and says, and he went and sold it, and the law is that if she wishes to collect from that field, she may collect from it, and if she wishes to collect from her husband's other unsold properties, she may collect from them. So even though the husband designated a specific field, this, by the way, would be an apotiki in the ketubah, she may nevertheless collect from other lands and movables that are going to be in his possession. And the Gemara is going to relate an incident. Rabbi Hilla says Rabbi Lazar ruled in such a case that, like the Baraisa, that the woman may collect from any of the husband's property that she chooses. And the Gemara is going to object to that because, again, we have different categories of property. We have the colleagues of the academy asking in this Gemara that she should collect only from the encumbered property, which is designated from the ketubah, not from the husband's other possessions. And the Gemara counters. Rabbi Yossi says to them, they are unencumbered properties before him. And yet you say that she should collect only from the designated encumbered property that was sold. And the Baraisa is therefore justified in allowing him to collect either from the husband's other properties or for the designated field that he had sold. Now, we're going to get another Baraisa that's going to clarify this a little bit, and the Gemara is going to say that the Baraisa, which teaches that a woman may collect either from the sold designated property or from whatever free property is available, refers to where the husband did not say to his wife, "You shall not have payment other than from this." And the Gemara says, but if he said to her, "You shall have not have payment other than from this," she collects only from that and not from the property her husband still owns. So this is saying where the husband's and the wife is agreeing to it, that there's two kinds of properties. One is where the husband is saying, "You shall have payment only from this and not from anything other than this," and this is going to be something exclusive. And then the woman is going to collect only from that, even if it's been sold, and the husband still owns on the property. But let's say that exclusive property that's tied to the ketubah becomes unusable through flooding. She cannot collect from the husband's other properties. So, if you have some unfortunate incident occur that destroys the property, that's that. Now, you have another kind of arrangement where the husband just designates property as being available for collection from the ketubah and does not restrict her to that property. And then basically that's not going to be exclusive. So even if he sold that land, she can go and collect from any other property that she wishes to. Again, the woman is a willing participant in this because she agrees to the ketubah before she gets married, and also if there's another law in ketubot that if he goes and he sells the property that's tied to it, that she has to somehow agree to it. And there's a procedure that talks about that, and that she has to consent to it. So it's not so straightforward. She does have to still consent to it. The Gemara now is going to talk about another law on property that was designated for payment of a debt. This is going to be from a ketubah, and it says regarding one who obligated a field to his fellow and then went and sold it. Rabbi Acha says it is sold temporarily until it is collected, and Rabbi Yossi says it is sold it is not sold even temporarily. So the question is, okay, is this exclusive connection to this property going to survive the sale? In other words, what this is asking, this is saying, okay, my property is this, and only this property is designated to my wife. I go in and make a sale. My wife, by the way, assents to it in some way. And now the question is this really like a temporary sale that the wife at a later date can come back and have a claim on it, and effectively like a lien? Is it going to be like a lien where she can come back and say, ketubah, hey, look, this was sold over to you. In a way, yes, I assented to it, but only because this lien on my ketubah is still there, and it doesn't get wiped out and cleaned up by a sale. That's going to be the opinion of Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Yossi is saying no. Even if you sell it, a lien from a ketubah gets cleaned up and can't be put onto the land at a later date. So the Gemara is going to look at Rabbi Yossi's ruling on this, and Rabbi Yossi's ruling is based on the following. It says, regarding an ox, it is common for him to cause it to elude the hand of the creditor, and therefore if one sells an ox that he designated for payment, the sale is effective. But regarding a field, it is not common to cause it to elude the hands of a creditor. Therefore, the sale of a field is not going to be effective at all. So Rabbi Yossi would be agreeing on a movable product that somebody could play games with, but on something that's not going to be a movable product like field of land, it is going to be more substantial and it's going to be wiped out. The Gemara now is going to question this assertion that a field can be kept from a creditor, and it says, consider the case, says this Gemara, where the field was sold to a powerful person. In this case, it's going to be similar to that of an ox, right? And basically the idea is that the purchaser can refuse to hand over the field, and Rabbi Yossi is not excluding such a case from his ruling based on the fact that the debtor cannot elude the creditor. So why does Rabbi Yossi not concede that the purchase of the field to a powerful person would not be an effective sale? The Gemara is going to answer that. Rabbi Yudin, the father of Rabbi Matanya, says it is common for the powerful to fall. So even if a powerful person were to do this, he may not be powerful in the future. So really what Rabbi Yossi is saying is no, a sale is a sale. And I understand that, you might not want to play games with a powerful person and, try to, come back and collect, like, if you were doing it with a movable property like an ox, and, that you might have trouble collecting at a later date and dealing with a powerful person. But he's saying, no, it doesn't matter if the guy's a powerful person because they go out of power. And just because, the creditor is going to wait for a time where he's going to try to seize the field, and he's not going to abandon the lien on it, it's basically that it might not be as secure as you think, because the creditor might lose power. So you see that with banks. You see, very big, famous banks sometimes go out of business, and this is a case where you can't hide a field. It's not like trying to hide an ox or trying to hide a car that has a loan on it. And the question is, is it considered already in the possession of a creditor, and would a debtor's sale have validity or not? That's going to be the question. So the Gemara is going to get into some of the difficulties of Rabbi Yossi's opinion, and there's a Baraisa that explains it and says, regarding one who writes a document designated his field as an apotiki, in other words, he's using the field, and it says either to his wife or her ketubah, or to the creditor for his debt. If he sold it, it is sold, and let the buyer be concerned for himself. In other words, that this would seem to contradict Rabbi Yossi's opinion that a sale of a designated apotiki field might not be always effective. So the Gemara is going to resolve this, and the Baraisa refers to where the husband said to his wife, "You shall have a right to payment from this field," since he did not limit the right to the payment to an apotiki field. The sale is going to be valid. And in what case does Rabbi Acha and Rabbi Yossi disagree? When he says to her, "You shall only have a right to payment from this field," rendering it an exclusive apotiki. And in this case, Rabbi Yossi is holding that the sale is going to be totally ineffective. And why is that? Rabbi Yossi is going to disqualify the sale in the case of the exclusive apotiki, where if the sale would be valid, the purchaser would not be able to avoid foreclosure by paying off the creditor with cash. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, the purchaser is not really secure with the purchase, and the sale is going to be invalid. In other words, that you still have this lien on there from the ketubah. And in the case of a non-exclusive apotiki, though, the purchaser can just pay off the creditor with cash and keep the property. And the purchaser is therefore going to be secure in his ownership of the property, since he knows that should the creditor come to seize the land, he always has the option of paying the debt and keeping the land. So that's going to be one of the differences. I know that it's a hard sugya, but we're going to get into more of it tomorrow. Have a great day.